All right. This is the business owner guide to gear. This is how to optimize your hormone protocol or your steroid protocol or cycle to still push the envelope with bodybuilding while running a full time business. So, this is a very specific video for a very specific demographic. And what's actually very interesting is about 75% of the guys I work with, they're business owners. And it seems to be the demographic that's very attracted to my fitness coaching and very attracted to my offer in general. Because I myself, so obviously I run a full time coaching business. I resonate with this demographic a lot because we go through the same things, we go through the same struggles, and I essentially had transitioned the way I've personally done my steroid cycles over the years from doing the really extreme bodybuilding cycles to now running my cycles a little bit differently to optimize my productivity, to optimize my energy levels while still being able to push the envelope of bodybuilding, while entailing everything of running a business. And for those of you guys that have followed my content for a long time, I talked a lot about this. But if you haven't, if you're new followers, first of all, my name is Evan Quinn. I'm a physique and lifestyle bodybuilding coach. Basically help guys build really, really fucking good physiques, and guys that don't necessarily compete. Not everybody has to compete to use performance enhancing drugs. It's actually it's a small subset of the people that use these things. But going back to my point, and the reason why I like working with business owners is this demographic of people, and yourself included, if you're watching this and you are a business owner, you execute. This demographic executes. So there's a reason why people don't walk around with good physiques all the time, right? It's a very small subset of people that actually end up achieving their bodybuilding goals or the physique goals, because it takes a certain level of discipline and work ethic to get there, and it's not for everybody. And people that have started businesses from ground fucking zero, right, from nothing, and built something great, they put their blood, sweat, and fucking tears into that shit. Okay. Like, that is not something that the average person does. The average person does not build a fucking business from fucking ground zero. And they're able to apply that level of pre-established discipline that they learned over the years of building their business into a bodybuilding system. This demographic also understands systems. They know how to apply themselves. They know the value of what you put in is what you get out, right? Inputs and outputs. So this is why this demographic does so fucking well. They follow plan, they execute, and they get fucking results, right? They're result driven people, and this is why I love working with them so much. And just real quick, so I recorded this video last night, and it was a full 40-minute video, and the fucking audio cut out. So the entire video didn't have fucking audio. So I lost a lot of organic moments here, which is unfortunate. When you record something from scratch, it's like you get all these organic moments that can't really be replicated. So I was a little bit upset about that. So I'm gonna be recording it again for you guys, and I'm gonna give you guys some really good value here. Because a lot of the guys that work with our business owners, they are taking gear, right? They're taking gear because they understand that's what's required to build a good physique, to build an elite level physique that they want. And a lot of the guys are taking TRT, or a lot of you guys are taking TRT, and you've never really done a cycle before, and you're not sure how to transition into those cycles. And I'm going to go into all this, but before I even get into that, I wanted to preface, the physique you guys are really going after. And I put this down here, and this is the steroid cycle spectrum, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. A lot of you guys, from what I'm seeing, you guys want to go after something like this. This is Frank Grillo. He's one of the most in shape fucking 60-year-olds I've ever seen in my life. And this is what's his name? Not go to the actors. Chris Hemsworth. 40 years old. These guys just walk around with like really good, muscular, lean physiques, way above average, like jacked, lean, not anything over the top. But I call this like top 5% elite level shape. This is what a lot of you guys go after. And what you guys want, as business owners, is you want a physique that just commands or complements your discipline level, because you put in so much work into building your business. You're a disciplined motherfucker, and you want your outward appearance to reflect that level of discipline. You want a physique that commands respect as the leader of your business, right? Your peers, your coworkers, your clients, your employees, they all look up to you, right? And when you have a physique that shows that you put an immense amount of effort and respect into yourself, that shows you're going to give that person the same level of respect. And like I said, you want a physique that shows others that you truly respect yourself to not only a deep level, but to a high extreme level. And you want a physique that just commands dominance. You want to walk into a room and just fucking own it. And a lot of you guys value these things. And this is not, the physique you guys want something for life. And you don't just want to be in and out of this game. Like, for example, there's a lot of pro bodybuilders and even competitive bodybuilders that they blast their face off for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. They get huge, they get massive, and they fall off. They fizzle out after their competition career is over. And that's not sustainable. You guys value something you can have for the rest of your life. You guys want a physique you can essentially maintain for the rest of your life. You guys value your health, you value your longevity, you value optimizing your energy levels and your productivity for your business. You value achieving a competitive edge in your field of business, and you want your physique to reflect these things, right? And you want your cycle to reflect these things. You want to set an example for your family, your peers, and you guys. This is something you guys truly value. You guys want to be the complete man. You guys want the physique, you want the health, you want the finances, you want your family, and if you guys are religious, you have your faith. So really, it's like four things that you guys are really going after to complete yourself as the man you want to be. And like I said before, you're not just trying to be in and out of this. Like I said, these competitive bodybuilders will just blast their fucking face off. They'll neglect their health and they'll fall off. That's why you see when competitors retire, they don't maintain their fucking 300-pound lean physique. They don't maintain their 250-pound lean physique. They downsize and they go back down to something that's more sustainable. You guys want something that you can maintain truly for life. So here's the problem you guys are facing. You guys want to use gear to help with your bodybuilding, but the problem is you don't want to run into the side effects that are going to compromise your day to day. So we all know this, and gear, if used incorrectly, can cause a lot of mental side effects like low energy, mood swings, depression, anxiety. These are all going to feed into the operations of their business, which you do not want as somebody running a full-time business that oversees people, that has to stay productive on a day-to-day basis and show up to their business in a certain way on a day-to-day basis. You don't want your cycle to be affecting these things. You don't want to drastically affect your health because, like we said before, longevity is important for you. You're on TRT, but you don't know how to properly transition into using other compounds. And listen, TRT clinics are great. They're gonna, especially for guys, over the age of 35, even get in the 40s or 50s, your natural hormone production, testosterone and growth hormone, they decline. So your physique starts to dwindle. It gets harder to make progress in the gym. You have low sex drive, low energy, all that stuff, low motivation, low drive. And getting your hormones back to baseline is a great fucking thing. Don't get me wrong. The problem is your clinic isn't exactly going to help you to, optimize your cycle for bodybuilding purposes. So you don't know how to make that transition. And at the end of the day, you don't want to go into this blindly because it's a huge gray area. There's a lot of things you can do wrong. There's a lot of things you do incorrectly. And, all in all, you're busy. Like your day is consumed by your fucking business and what you have to do. So you just don't have time to figure this shit out on your own. That's why I want to make these videos. I want to make them super fucking concise. I want to tell you guys, hey, like this is what you need to do. This is how to implement it. And you guys just want to watch it, implement what you need to do, and move on, right? You guys don't have time to sit here and watch a whole scientific deep dive into fucking testosterone and its mechanisms of action and fucking me reading off a bunch of PubMed studies confusing you guys and boring you, right? I mean, it's great, but we just don't have time. We want to be learning this stuff. We want to learn how to implement it and just apply it, move on. So that's what this video is about. So let's go over the steroid cycle spectrum. Now, there's really three categories of steroid cycles or just total milligram doses that we have to take into consideration. And obviously there's stuff in between these, but usually people are going to lie in one of these three categories. So like we talked about before, we have our TRT and HRT. And this is literally just replacement. And depends on if you have a good clinic or a good doctor, they might prescribe you a little bit more or some other compounds. But typically this is the total milligram dosage. When I'm talking about total milligram dosage, I'm talking about total anabolics combined over the week in milligrams. So TRT or HRT would be about 150 to 300 total milligrams of steroids per week. So this would be testosterone. Usually it's testosterone cypionate, or it could be enanthate, depending on the clinic. This would be about 150 to 200 milligrams per week. So just enough to put you a little bit above baseline, right? A little bit above, what you would naturally produce, maybe in the high normal level or even above that. They might give you some nandrolone, again, depending on the clinic and depending on what you actually need. So, for example, a clinic might give you 50 to 100 milligrams of nandrolone, like DECA or NPP, for joint health. And they might give you a dose of growth hormone, again, a replacement dose, some like 1 IU to 3 IUs per day. And this is like all this is doing is just putting you back at baseline. So you can make some good progress on this, don't get me wrong. But for the goals that you guys want, you guys understand you probably need a little bit more. And again, your clinic isn't really going to help you make that transition unless you have a really, really good doctor that was like a bodybuilder in the past, right? But that's very rare. So you guys understand, yes, this is going to get you somewhere, but it's not going to get you to where you want to be physique wise. Now we have this right here. Now, like I showed before, the Frank Grillo, Chris Hemsworth, this is the physique you guys are mainly going for. You guys it's very rare that I work with somebody that wants to look like a 250-pound IFBB pro. That's a very, very small subset of guys I work with. Most of you guys are going for someone like this. And this is typically what the average gym goer that uses steroids is using to achieve a look like this. So total milligrams would be anywhere from 500 to 1,500 milligrams per week. So, getting up there in that kind of like high range. Not crazy high like the extreme bodybuilding, which we'll go over in a second, but, it's like mid-range. So this is going to be testosterone, anywhere from about 350 to 750 milligrams is typically what guys are using. Again, depending on the goal or, what they want to use. And usually they're using a secondary anabolic, something like Masteron, Primobolan, Equipoise, Nandrolone, usually at about the same or similar dose, about 350 to 750 milligrams. And they'll likely use some heavy hitters. So some things like Trenbolone, orals at about 100 to 350 milligrams per week. And these are typically, it depends on the type of person that's using it, their risk tolerance, their goals, all that stuff. They might run them for short durations. They might run them for long durations. Again, I'm just giving you guys like an average based on what I've seen, based on anecdotal data from talking to so many fucking people, from working with so many people. This is typically what the average gym goer is using. And anywhere from 3 to 6 IUs of HGH. So again, just like above a replacement, but not so much getting into like bodybuilder territory. So then we have the extreme bodybuilding. So this is you're trying to get as massive as possible. You don't give a single fuck about any ramifications. You don't care about it affecting your life. Your whole goal is just to get massive and stay massive, right? It's to build a lot of size. Maybe you're going for a fucking pro IFBB card, something like that. You're trying to like, I put a couple examples of what competitors would be using, right? And I put some examples of competitors, right? So this is Chris Bumstead, obviously. So he, says he takes low doses, but we all know it's bullshit. He's taking the same thing as every other competitor is taking. It's obvious. To stay competitive at that level, you have to. And then, rest in peace, but this is Boston Lloyd. Now, Boston Lloyd was very open about his use, and some of the cycles he did were very high. They were very, I would call them reckless, and, it's very sad what happened to him. But the reason I put him on here is to tell you guys, the ramifications of running these things, right? How they can affect your life and your health and your longevity. So again, rest in peace. It was tragic what happened to him, but, I put him here as an example. Now, the total milligrams of something like an extreme bodybuilding dose is anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 milligrams plus per week. So this is high. This is really high. They're using testosterone well above 1,000 milligrams. Like 1,000 milligrams is like low for these guys. They're using a secondary anabolic. Sometimes they're taking one, sometimes they're taking 3 other injectables. So, this could be any additional anabolic like Primo, EQ, Nandrolone, anything at about 500 to 1,000 milligrams. They're using Trenbolone at no less than 350 milligrams. Like some of these guys are going upwards of 500, 700, 1,000 mgs of Tren for their contest preps. They're using multiple orals. So, not just one. They're using like Anavar, Winstrol, D-Ball, fucking everything. right? They're running those at about 50 to 100 milligrams per day. And they're taking HGH. So anywhere from 8 IUs all the way to fucking like 30 IUs, like high doses of growth hormone. These guys are doing everything in their power to just get as big as possible. Like 30 IUs of growth hormone, it sounds like a lot, but I know competitors that are using these things, even at the amateur level, which is crazy. Some of these amateur guys use way more than the pros. They just don't have the genetics to, compete with these guys. Again, that's a whole nother topic for another video, but some of these guys are using growth hormone upwards of 30 IUs. Also, heavy insulin use is very, very prevalent in this dosing category. So here's the thing. We have these three categories, and yes, there's some stuff in between as well. But for the majority of you guys watching this, you guys want to be around here. You guys are going for this. And I'll explain like why in a little bit and why this is going to be good for business owners and how we can actually structure our cycles, compounds and dosing to have it, optimize our energy levels and business productivity and not completely fuck ourselves up and, detriment our business. I'm going to go into that in a little bit, but you guys mostly want to be around here and you want to look like something like this. So I want to backtrack for a second and just tell you guys a little bit about, my bodybuilding experience. So how I built my physique over the years. And like I told you, my cycles today, running a full-time coaching business as a full-time business owner, they look a lot different than they did back when I was building my size at first. So this is basically how I built my physique. Now, these two pictures right here, this is the peak of my bodybuilding. So I'm 5'6", for those of you that don't know. And my body weight would range anywhere from about 195 pounds to my heaviest was 205 pounds. So, I was pretty heavy, but also very lean. I built a lot of muscle. And the cycles I ran to build that size were anywhere from like 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of gear per week. So not like right here in the extreme bodybuilding. This is like way, way really high. Most of my cycles would be about 2,000 milligrams. So I have gone up to 3,000 before total milligrams. I felt like shit. Obviously it was way, way too much for my body, but I was usually sitting like somewhere around this range right here to build my size. So I was running testosterone at no less than 750 milligrams. I've gone up to 1,250 before, and that was too much for my body. My sweet spot was usually about 750. I was running tren in most of my cycles, no less than 350 milligrams. I was using heavy use of orals. So Anadrol and Winstrol were my favorites. I loved using those two combined. And I'd run those at anywhere from 50 to 100 milligrams per day for short durations, anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. And I was using some growth hormone. Not a crazy amount, but anywhere from 3 to 4 IUs. I've gone up to 6, but usually I would run about 3 to 4 IUs. Now, here's the thing. And here's the thing about me running those doses. Yes, it worked, but I felt like shit for most of those cycles. 2,000 milligrams I could do pretty well at, but I was going upwards of like 2,500, 3,000 milligrams. I felt terrible. And I didn't realize it at the time, or I kind of ignored it, brushed it off just because the bodybuilding progress was so good. So like I felt like shit in my day-to-day. I was lethargic and, especially from all the orals and the tren and the GH I would use. So I was like, oh yeah, I kind of feel tired, but fuck, like my shoulders are getting bigger. I just hit a bench press PR, right? That would be my mentality. I held a lot of water on these cycles, like not just on my body, but my face too. If you guys go back in my old videos, you see my face was like really round and inflamed. I was lethargic a lot, like I mentioned. And certain cycles would make me more anxious and on edge than others, especially when I would run tren, 100%. So here's the thing. I did not have a successful business back when I was doing my bodybuilding. So I could get away with feeling like this, right? I didn't have employees to manage. I didn't have clients to manage. I didn't have any back-end business tasks to put time and effort into. I was a broke personal trainer, right? I would do my job and I would go home and focus on my bodybuilding, right? So bodybuilding was all I put my time and effort into. And here's the thing, there is a time and a place to push bodybuilding hard 100%. And that time and place for me was years back when I was first building my size. And pro and competitive bodybuilders are like okay with feeling like this and running these big cycles just for 5 to 10% more muscle gained. Okay. Like they're okay with feeling like shit, being lethargic, potentially affecting health markers just to get a little bit more muscle. So nowadays, being a full-time business owner, I cannot get away with doing these cycles, and neither can you guys as business owners. You cannot get away with that either. So where's the middle ground we have to run? And like I said, is going to be something like this, where we can still push the envelope of bodybuilding, still have optimal energy levels, optimal business productivity, everything, and still have our cycle and our bodybuilding approach in general hold true to all of these values we talked about: the health, the longevity, optimizing energy levels and productivity, just being there for your family, right? Like, and again, you're not trying to be in and out of this. You're trying to maintain this for fucking life. So let's go into the actual design of these cycles and like what compounds we can use, what doses we can use, what compounds to stay away from. And keep in mind, I'm going to go into more of the mental effects of these compounds and how they're actually, and like why they're important for you guys as business owners to know. Because like, yes, I can talk about how trend builds a lot of muscle and test builds a lot of muscle and blah blah blah. Yeah, they all build muscle. We know this. They're fucking steroids. Of course they do. But there's certain effects, both positive and negative, that we have to take into consideration as business owners. Where some of them we can use to our advantage, and some of them we want to just stay the fuck away from because they're going to detriment our productivity and detriment our mental state. And we need our mental state 100% at all times. So you're not really going to hear this information anywhere else, by the way. Not a lot of people will go into this. So you guys are, again, I'm glad I can sit here and just give you guys all this fucking value, because you guys will not hear this shit really anywhere else. So this is how to design your cycle as a business owner to, again, enhance your bodybuilding and productivity and energy levels. So like I said, the total weekly milligram dosage is going to be anywhere from 500 to 1500 milligrams of gear per week. This is going to depend on your goal, your risk tolerance, your experience level, how much you're willing to endure, like all this stuff, the individual genetics. There's so many factors that go into this, right? So let's talk about the compounds we want to be utilizing, like 100%. So we'll go into testosterone first. And testosterone is going to range from anywhere at 350 to 700 milligrams. Again, depending on goal, risk tolerance, age, genetic predisposition, all that stuff. So all in all, testosterone just makes you feel really fucking good in very, very simple terms. So the more testosterone that I take, the better that I feel, within reason. Obviously, if I go to like 1200 milligrams, I'm going to feel like shit. But, if I keep my testosterone around 500 to 700 milligrams, I feel fucking phenomenal. I feel euphoric all the time. I have very high energy levels. I have very high motivation, all which feed into the way I show up to my business and my business productivity, my work productivity. So we want this. We want this in our cycle. Testosterone should always be the base of your cycle, because it's just such a feel-good compound. So it's literally your bioidentical hormone. So there are very few deleterious health effects to running testosterone. Now, if you run a super physiological dose of testosterone over a replacement dose, yes, there's going to be, some negative health ramifications to a very, very small extent. It's not going to be anything drastic. But again, like we're trying to, we're not running this dose of testosterone forever. We have to understand that. But, you can run high dose of testosterone or moderate dose of testosterone for a long period of time and not completely fuck up your health. So, like I said, increases energy levels, increases libido if estrogen is controlled, increases confidence, increases assertiveness, all which can benefit yourself as a business owner. And improve sleep and recovery, 100%. A lot of you guys don't sleep well. A lot of you guys are, having trouble sleeping. You guys are wired all the time. Testosterone just helps give you a really good quality sleep, 100%. Let's talk about Masteron. So Masteron, I like to run that anywhere from 350 to 500 milligrams. That's usually what I recommend. And again, depending on goal, risk tolerance, all that stuff, we talked about that. And Masteron, the way I like to describe it is it improves goal-oriented focus. Like when I'm taking Masteron, I could do a task and just stay fucking focused on that task. It's like, it just makes me attack that fucking task like a fucking lion. It's a very interesting feeling. Has a massive libido increase. So that can turn into a negative. That can be distracting if you can't handle it. So in that case, you just modulate your dose down. But you can almost like channel that libido into other things, if that makes sense. into like actual like positive things to like benefit your work and your business. So this is what I really like about Masteron. This is how this can really benefit you guys. A lot of you guys are caffeine fucking addicts. You need caffeine to, do your work for the day. You need it to fucking stay awake. These guys are fucking working all the time. You guys are running around like fucking madmen. So, you know, when you're taking Masteron, it feels like you're on a low dose of caffeine throughout the entire day. And actually, there's actually less of a need for stimulants for work. So a lot of you guys are slamming coffee, energy drinks, all that stuff to stay productive. When I take Masteron, I feel less of a need for caffeine. I always feel like, the same euphoria that caffeine gives me, just on a lower level but more stable throughout the day. So for example, without Masteron, I might need like 3 to 4 cups of coffee per day. On Masteron, I might need only 1 or 2. And this is very, very chemically similar to DHT. So there are very few deleterious health effects when it comes to taking Masteron. Besides maybe some prostate swelling if you're prone to it, if you're taking a high dose, or some lowering of HDL cholesterol, which can happen. But again, control the dose and don't run it forever, and you're going to be okay. As long as you're assessing blood work and everything too, and making sure you're staying in a good range, you can mitigate a lot of problems. So Primo, let's talk about Primo. Primo, I like to run anywhere from 350 to 700 milligrams. Again, around the same dose of testosterone. Again, this is the one I'd recommend. And this is great because this just kind of works on the back burner to build muscle. So as a business owner, you don't want your cycle to feel like you're taking drugs. Like, yes, you want like higher energy levels. You want to use these things for higher energy levels, but you don't want to feel like stimulated all the time. You don't want to feel aggressive all the time. Because like you want to have that in the gym, and when you leave the gym, you want to leave it in the gym, right? You want to affect and feed into other aspects of your day. So you don't really feel like you're on anything when you take Primo. That's what's good. It's just working on the back burner to help you build muscle, and it's another feel good compound. Same thing with testosterone. It just makes you feel good when you take Primo, assuming you keep your estrogen in control. You don't tank your estrogen with the Primo, but that's a whole nother topic. There's also very few deleterious health effects, just like with testosterone. One of the safest, or I say safest, ways to do bodybuilding is literally just test Primo and a low dose of growth hormone. Run that for a very long time. I ran that same cycle for almost a year. Blood work looked pretty fucking good at the end of it. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm saying that's what I've done personally. Okay. And the good thing about these two compounds right here is they help just keep your estrogen and your side effects at bay. So it reduces the need for any sort of aromasin. It reduces the amount that you aromatize from your testosterone. So if your estrogen is really high, you're going to get like low sex drive, low energy, moodiness. You're going to be emotional, which can, affect the decision-making processes in your business. You want to make decisions based on logic, not based on emotion, because your estrogen's high and you're fucking crying every time you hear a song on the radio, right? You don't want that. That's going to be like the worst thing as a business owner. So we want our estrogen at a good level, so we have good levels of energy, good levels of just drive and confidence throughout the day. We do not want our estrogen high, and these compounds help to control that. Now, let's talk about orals. Anadrol and Winstrol and Anavar too. So these are really great because, again, if they're in controlled doses, like 25 to 50 milligrams per day for a short duration, I say that you don't want to run them for a long period of time because you run into toxicity, but they give you, again, aggression and performance in the gym and not outside of the gym. So you take these pre-workout, like 2 hours before you work out, you get that gym aggression, you get like really good pumps, really good strength in the gym. You're fucking training hard as fuck, and you leave the gym and it's not going to carry with you throughout the day. So if they're used for a short duration, like 4 to 8 weeks, you won't experience much, if any, liver toxicity. And if you get blood work and you find your liver enzymes are a little bit elevated, they're going to come back down to normal after you cease the oral. The liver regenerates very, very quickly. Now, this one, I'm going to change the color of my highlighter because this one's so important. Let's go back here real quick. Let's do this in red. So Trenbolone. So this is a controversial one right here. So Trenbolone at a low dose, so 75 to 150 milligrams per week. So and again, this is not for everybody. Keep in mind, I'm going to go into why it's not for everybody in a little bit, but this will massively increase confidence and assertiveness. So for those of you guys in sales, or those of you guys that are in sales situations, this can really, really help with that. Just really increase your assertiveness, your conviction, and just your the way you carry yourself in conversation. It's a really, really powerful drug for that. It literally changes your characteristics in a positive way if controlled. Like for example, when I take Tren, I feel like I could be like a stand-up comedian. Like it just makes me feel fucking amazing when I take a low enough dose. It increases risk-taking behavior. So again, this can be a bad thing, but in terms of like if you're making a certain investment in your business, or you're trying to make, or it'll decrease that time frame between decision making, if that makes sense. Because a lot of you guys want to act with like speed and efficiency. You don't usually want to like think about things when you're trying to run a business. You're like, okay, I have to act on this immediately. I want to think about it and just fucking move on. Trend will almost like help you do that, if that makes sense. It's like it's not something you want to be doing all the time. Like for example, when I took Tren in my contest prep, one of the things that would happen to me is I would like always like want to purchase things like right off the rip, and I'd make like very impulsive purchases, but that was because I was taking a lot of Tren. Okay. So that's just like an example, but you can almost channel that into like a positive way. Again, you have to kind of take it to understand this, but if I'm not making sense, it's probably because you haven't taken Tren before. So, um, anyways, helps you operate on less sleep. This is huge. So when I take Tren, I could sleep 5 hours and get up and I'm like ready to fucking start the day. A lot of you guys are working up until the time you go to bed, and fucking coincidentally enough, it's 10:45 right now, so I'm probably gonna go to bed in like an hour. I'm working up until the point I go to bed. I'm probably gonna sleep for 6 hours and wake up, right, and start the day again. Now, this can really, really help you because, if you're not sleeping a lot, and again, sleep is really important. Try your best to get the best possible sleep. But, if you can't, you still operate on a very high energy level without a lot of sleep. So it acts on the glucocorticoid receptor to retain and build muscle under high work stress. So, for example, if you guys are going through like a busy season, let's say you run a landscaping company and it's springtime and you're fucking going from location to location, you're super fucking busy, you're processing sales, you're fucking closing a ton of deals, and you're stressed out of your fucking mind. Okay, well, that stress can have a negative impact on how much muscle you retain in your workouts and your performance and everything like that, and your fat loss too. Cortisol, high cortisol can negatively impact fat loss. Trenbolone will directly negate this. Okay, so this is why contest prep competitors, like, they'll take Trenbolone towards the end of their dieting phase when they're on really low food and really high cardio, because they'll be stressed out of their mind. Their body's going through so much fucking stress and their cortisol's through the roof. So it allows them to retain muscle through that high stress. So you guys can use this to your advantage as business owners, guys going through high stress situations basically on a day-to-day basis. So just keep in mind, this is not for everybody, because this will literally amplify your personality traits, either good or bad. So if you're naturally a dickhead, it's going to make you more of a dickhead. If you're naturally an anxious person, it's going to make you more of an anxious person. So just keep that in mind. If you are any of those characteristics, don't take Tren, because it's going to amplify those. All right, so growth hormone. Let's go back to yellow here. Growth hormone. This is really good. So anywhere from 2 to 6 IUs per day of GH. So it increases recovery, especially for those of you guys that are over the age of 35, which a lot of you guys are. It improves sleep, which can directly help your energy levels and your productivity for the next day. So obviously, if you sleep better, you're going to be more productive. So it can lower the amount of AES usage that you need. And I made a whole video on growth hormone, by the way. If you just go back to my channel, I made it a couple weeks ago. So if you guys want to learn more about GH, just watch that video. But it can really help it can help you use less gear and get away with using less gear, because it has synergy with the gear you're taking. So you could take, let's say, less than 1,000 milligrams of total gear per week and just more growth hormones, get the same effect with less health ramifications. It also just improves hair and skin quality, gives you a younger, more attractive appearance. I mean, growth hormone is literally like the fountain of youth for a lot of you guys. So, again, people make a first impression of you in the first 5 to 7 seconds they interact with you. So if you have good hair, good skin, you look attractive, people are just going to generally respect you more and perceive you better, especially in business situations. The better you look, probably the more successful you're going to be, honestly. So These are the compounds you want to be utilizing. Now let's talk about the ones that you do not want to be utilizing and want to stay the fuck away from as business owners. So let's talk about nandrolone. So anything over about 100 milligrams per week of nandrolone is usually going to have a negative impact on your mental health and your mental state. So it generally makes people very anxious and can cause low mood and depression and can affect your business operations. So you want to be showing up to your business confident, high energy, assertive, and ready to fucking work, right? You don't want to show up to your business depressed, moody, anxious. That's going to detriment your fucking day to day. So nandrolone, just, some people respond well to it, some people don't. I would just stay away from it and not run that risk, because there's so many things you can use over here, like we just talked about, that are going to give you plenty of gains and not run into those problems. Okay, so I would just stay away from DECA unless it's a low dose for joint health. And it can oftentimes be difficult to keep prolactin in range. In my opinion, it's just not really worth it. Equipoise. So I put a question mark next to equipoise because for some people, it's not going to be super great. If you're generally not a strong aromatizer, it can literally crush your estrogen easily. So even at like a low dose, even at like 200, 300 milligrams, it can tank your estrogen because one of the metabolites of equipoise acts like aromasin in the body, or exemestane, to lower your systemic estrogen. So when I take equipoise, for example, I feel like garbage. It just destroys my estrogen. I have to run my test way higher to keep my estrogen even at like a baseline level. So when you have low estrogen, you have no drive, you have no energy, you feel like you're dragging, you literally feel like a zombie. So if I tank my estrogen, it's like I'll wake up and I can barely even get out of bed. Like that, like that's how bad it is. I'm laughing, but it's like it's no laughing matter. And I'll just be like, I'll have to force myself to get out of bed. It's like, okay, left foot, right foot, left foot. Oh, I gotta walk up the stairs. Oh fuck. It's like everything feels like a grueling task. That is not what you want to be doing, especially when you have to operate at a very high level on a day to day. So you do not want that. Trenbolone, over 150 milligrams. Now, over this range can cause anxiety, paranoia, unnecessary aggression, sleeplessness. You do not want to be doing this. If you are lashing out at your employees, lashing out at your clients, making emotional based decisions in your business, making emotional based purchases in your business, that is obviously, I don't even have to say it, that's not a good thing. This will compromise the way you interact with your employees and clients, like I mentioned, more likely to make emotional based decisions, and the irritableness can affect your work productivity. So one example I can give you when I take a high dose of Tren is I'll be doing like work on my laptop, and like 5 minutes will go by and I'll get like irritated and I'll be like, all right, like fuck this, I want to do something else. Like it like prevents like having your trend too high and being in that really stimulated hyper aggressive state. It just prevents you from being in a workflow. It's such a hard thing to describe. Again, like when I was describing this over here, about like the emotional based purchases and stuff, it's like you have to like take trend to really understand this. So just take my word for it. And when you run a business, please just don't run your trend over like 150 milligrams. Um, even that is pushing it. So most orals, or high dose orals in general. So stay away from things that are like exceptionally liver toxic. So things like D-bol, Superdrol, Methyltren. I haven't really talked about Methyltren so much, but it's basically like an oral form of Trenbolone, which destroys your liver enzymes, makes you feel like garbage after a couple weeks. Same thing with Superdrol. So when you're liver toxic, you'll be super lethargic, which can lower your productivity. So, towards the end of like a big oral run for me, after maybe 12 weeks of being on oral, like I'll feel really lethargic and it'll just be hard for me to focus. I'll be falling asleep, basically just like doing just normal shit. And it's just not fun. So don't even run that risk. If you're gonna do orals, do them for short durations like we talked about here, and at a moderate, reasonable dose, like 25 to 50 mg per day. And growth hormone, over 8 IUs. So a high dose GH will just cause general tiredness throughout the day. And it'll just require you to need like more sleep. So a lot of you guys have a set schedule. Like you have a set time you have to wake up and you have a set time that you go to bed. Usually you guys are usually doing work and you guys are always like on like throughout the entire day. So your time in bed is like limited, right? You guys might only sleep like 6, 7 hours, and 7 hours like pushing it. So, when you need that extra hour of sleep and you're not getting it, it's going to make you feel like garbage for the whole day, and over 8 IUs of GH will make you do that because it's causing your body a need for recovery. So if you're not giving it that recovery, it's going to fight back. So this especially happens after eating carb meals. So when I bumped my dose of GH up to 6 IUs, like back, a couple of years ago, what would happen is I would eat a meal of like chicken and jasmine rice. And if I didn't move around and I just sat at the table and let my blood sugar like, rise up really quickly, I would end up just like falling asleep. I'd just like fucking be like this. I'd be like knocked out and I'd wake up like 5 minutes later and I wouldn't even remember like where I was. And it was just like annoying. Like like every time I would eat a carb meal, I'd just fall asleep at the table. And it was just like I just couldn't get any fucking work done. Like it was terrible for my productivity. So just stay away from it. I would just go with a replacement dose or at a maximum like 6 IUs. And again, this is really going to depend on the person and how they would personally respond to it. Okay, so we went over cycle design. So essentially total milligram dosage, 500, 1500 milligrams per week. What compounds to utilize, what compounds to stay away from. And you guys can literally just plug and play with these and just give them a try and see what happens. I gave you guys some examples down here that you can take a look at of how you can, do these cycles within these parameters right here. So bulk and growing cycles is really simple. Something like 750 tests, 500 mgs of primo, 500 mgs of test, 350 mgs of primo, 4 A's of GH. And this would be like a lower AAS approach with a little bit of a higher GH approach. Something like 500 mgs of testosterone, 50 mgs of anavar on training days only, 4 to 6 IUs of GH. Again, a little bit lower on the anabolics, a little bit higher on the GH. Some cut cycles. So threw in a little bit of trenbolone here. So about 100 milligrams of tren, 350 mass prop, 500 test, and 4 IUs GH. A little bit of a higher AAS approach right here. So something like 750 mgs of testosterone, 350 mgs of mass, 50 mgs of Winstrol daily. And then kind of like a low dose across the board, adding up to, something like a little over a gram per week. So like 350 test, 350 primo, 350 mass, 50 mgs of anavar, then 4 A's GH. Again, these are literally examples. You can try these if you want. And these are all within the parameters that we talked about over here. So, roughly under 1500 milligrams of gear per week and using all the compounds that we talked about within the doses that we prescribed. Awesome. All right. So that's pretty much all I got for you guys. I really hope this guide helped you guys out. Because this is not really something that you hear a lot of people talk about, because, as business owners, you guys need to run your cycles differently than pro bodybuilders. Obviously, you guys don't want to be lethargic and have your health affected and just, blast your face off for a year and then just lose it because you had to come off because of health ramifications, right? You guys want a physique they can maintain essentially for life that maintains all these values that we talked about here: health, longevity, optimizing your business growth, right? Those three things. So that's pretty much all I got. Really hope this helped you guys out, and I'll be making more of these videos pretty soon. Finally found the time to make these. My business has really been picking up, and just that's pretty much what it is. I was pissed off last night when I recorded that video and the audio didn't fucking show up, and I was like fucking heated. I was like, Jesus Christ, I have to record this thing again. Lost all those organic moments, but obviously I care about helping you guys, and I want to get this content out for you guys because a lot of you guys like these videos. So, I made an effort to just fucking block out some time, get it out, and and get some good content out for you guys. So again, hopefully you can apply this. You can literally take every single thing in this video and apply it into your own protocol. Again, it's going to help your bodybuilding, help your business productivity, and, help you just achieve the physique that you want. Again, the physique that commands discipline, the physique that commands the personalization of the business owner that you want to be or that you are. So again, hope this helps, and that's all I got for you guys, and we'll touch base in the next video.